Hi, this is Judith, last name redacted,
And Doc Retro.
and you're watching the Degenerate podcast, the Daring Degenerates podcast.
Degenerates!
Hey, this is the first one, so I guess we can give ourselves a pat on the back for starting it.
Oh yeah, sure. I bet you'd want to do that. Come on, let's get through this. We got stuff to do.
Okay, anyway, fucking down. Kind of big things happening to news today, like one particular net neutrality.
Oh yeah. Thanks, Ajit Pai.
Oh,
Thanks
God.
so much.
Yeah, good evening to everybody except Jeep Pie. So, to explain for those of you who don't know, what net neutrality is basically a provision that treats the internet as a commodity. And what that means is, when you already pay for your internet for that monthly package, where you get all your service providers, all the websites and stuff you use on a daily basis, like you do right now, it basically keeps your ISP, like AT&T or Comcast or Verizon, from deciding what they get to charge on what website, or giving you extras for, say, having to pay extra for Netflix. And that's basically exactly what net neutrality keeps them from doing. However, with the new vote that the FCC put in, they essentially repealed that decision, allowing that to be at the mercy of the essentially the ISP, so they can charge you exorbitant rates.
And restrict certain informations from you.
So yeah, right now, even though the vote went through to repeal it, it's not done yet. They still have to go to Congress, and it can take a 60. I think it takes like 60 votes to basically shut it down and basically keep net neutrality how it is and how everyone really wants it to be.
Because ideally, we want Ajit Pai to take this to court, and then they'll be like, this is bad and very unconstitutional, and just get out of here.
Yeah. So hopefully, we can only hope, given the track record of our government, there's, it seems like the odds are stacked against us. But I've heard in other news that several states, I think over 20 states, have kind of joined in to sue the FCC for basically voting against what the majority of
and Judith, and the percentage of people who don't want this?
About 83%. Basically, most of Americans are like, no, we want our internet how it is now.
Fighting the good fight.
So yeah, at this point, the only thing you can really do, there was a number earlier before the vote went in to basically text resist to the FCC office, but since that's passed, the best thing to do is to call your representative and let them know, keep our internet the same. We want things how we've been having.
And as much as you want to say it outright when you call them, I know you want to say fuck a Pai, fuck all the people who are letting this happen, but when you make your calls, send your messages, try to stay as composed as possible, and then
You want to explain yourself, like how you want to do it. Like you want to explain, hey, my name is this, I'm your representative, I'm a constituent, and I want this, and this is why we need net neutrality not to be repealed. Stuff like that. But you don't want to trust me, we all want to go in and just give the middle finger to Jeep Pie.
Frankly, that's for social media like Twitter and stuff.
Yeah,
that's where you can afford to drop that.
Actually, the funniest thing, if you check on Twitter and just go Jeep Pie's name, like
everyone is on his ass.
I don't think there's a single person, at least on Twitter, that hasn't defamed him in some way, and it's a pretty beautiful sight.
Yeah. Like
which could probably end if this repeal goes through. We probably won't be able to see much of that. So
yeah, just he's managed to elevate himself to the shame of a nation.
All right,
that's our big piece on recent events. But here at Daring Degenerates, we talk about plenty of other stuff too. We shoot the shit. We have some fun.
Right, and speaking of fun, actually, right before this started, I saw the trailer for the Spider-Man Into the Spider-Verse.
Ooh, that is a good one, and so like Judith said, that's by Marvel, but through Sony Animation Studios, and it does not star Peter Parker, at least not in the main character capacity. The protagonist here is Miles Morales.
Oh, and I've been waiting for Miles Morales. It's been years, and every time I see it, I'm just like,
you're just like hyped because you know who he is. Now,
right.
Let me take you a step back there so we can let the good people know who Miles is for the uninformed. Miles Morales is the Spider-Man of Earth 1610, the Ultimate Universe, at least before recent continuity stuff, you'll have to read up on that. But the basics of it is, when Peter Parker died in the Ultimate Universe, Miles Morales stepped up, got spider powers, and fought the good fight. At least, for a good while. Peter came back, just comics continuity is wild. But in any case, Miles is a star of Into the Spider-Verse. And Judith, you believe you had something to say on that matter?
Yeah, I think it's interesting. I know the comic continuity is weird, and all the multiple universes, but like all I know is that like this is kind of like the first time you see like a big, at least in the big way, like comes to like I know in the comics, they'll have comics with equal, like not say equal representation, but finally representation for like people of color, but. Now to see it in the movie as someone, a main character, people know Spider-Man.
Because with people who read comics, it's well and good when like we got stuff in the stories there, but like everybody watches movies, everybody watches TV.
Right.
It's easier to get out to people than like comics, which have always been known as just this hard thing to get into. And someday I'll talk on that.
Yeah, I think the interesting comics are just an interesting medium to talk about in terms of like how it affects pop culture, how pop culture affects it. But in terms of general moviegoers or TV goers, people who kind of like the mainstream of people, this is a big thing because people finally get to see a face that isn't Peter Parker, the same excuse language, the same white face we always get to see in every iteration. Every TV show and every cartoon and every video game. Because
it's just a step up seeing like someone fresh take the wheel. And like Miles, from what I haven't read a lot of them, but from what I have read, he is an exciting character. He's a lot of fun to follow, and it's good to see him on screen.
I'm definitely ready for it. I think one of the interesting things, when you look into the trailer, they kind of stress like this isn't just about Miles. This is every other Spider. Like, I don't know how many others, but this is others.
Because we did say the title was Into the Spider-Verse, and the last time we heard that name was a comic book event from 2014 called Edge of Spider-Verse, where Spider-Man, Spider-Woman, just anyone with a spider motif in the Marvel multiverse came together, did some stuff of their own, and I cannot wait to see how this movie will play with that. Just the lore, all the different characters, the different possibilities. I will admit that I don't know everything about the Spider-Man lore, but learning new stuff is always fun, especially when it's well done.
And also, I think one of the good and easy things about this is that because there's it's essentially a bunch of different spider people. It basically gives them a kind of a vehicle to add in diversity where it keeps people from kind of making the argument of you're basically the kind of idea of pandering or shoehorning where it's it's an unnatural fit for what is essentially a good story. But I never really understood. Because you got the merit of the argument.
Because the truth about these things is that when you look at it from a writing perspective, the whole point is just do whatever sounds good and flows narratively. Because it's not, you don't really have to follow what's been said before you rigidly. Otherwise, that doesn't necessarily make for a good story. Maybe you're following the source material to the T, but otherwise you're not really doing anything interesting or just groundbreaking.
Right, and that's kind of that's why I'm really this. I'm not only for this movie. It looks good. It's an animated film, so it's a break from the live action Marvel.
And not to mention, in terms of animated films, it doesn't look like something you'd see from Disney or anything from most other companies. It's got its own distinct style.
Right, and I think outside of one, I personally am kind of burned out from Marvel. Movies live action. So this is a good break. That's why actually when I saw it was kind of weird because I was like, is this going to be this one-off thing? They do little anime promotionals for on TV shows, but it looks like it's going to be in theaters.
Because in the sea of the Marvel Cinematic Universe and all the other live-action films, like you said, it is a welcome break, but we don't know where they want to go with this. But it seems like they're coming up with good ideas now, and I hope they follow the trend of just coming up with new material to put forth.
Now while this seems kind of I see this as a positive note, and it seems like a step forward to introduce all the other diverse characters they have there.
Yeah.
Something tells me that they could like they have a kind of a record of doing. Marvel has a record of doing. It's kind of like I don't know, fucking over their good content.
No, yeah. It's especially been a problem in the comics. The reason why it hasn't been a problem in the movies is because they have a safe formula.
Right.
They play. It's not. They don't necessarily have bad films. Anyone can tell you they have fun watching the Marvel movies. I know I do. But the problem with them is that like they just aren't groundbreaking. They don't try anything new. They don't try anything that might be a mistake. Which isn't to say that they should be making bad films. That's quite the opposite of what I want.
It's something about like kind of like experimenting. Like you got to take risks. And
exactly.
I feel like this I honestly I don't even think of this as a risk. I feel like this is going to be something guaranteed.
This is going to be good.
Like Spider-Man, and you kind of have you have Spider-Man but a new face. I feel like this is going to invigorate a lot.
And not to mention they're doing it even because we look at it, we see something good. Even then, like just choosing to make a film animated where most of them are live action, just little things like that, and a lot of other decisions they've made for this movie. It's just different. It's fresh. It's a refreshing feeling to see that they're doing something besides the usual. It shows that they want to try new things out, see what people like, and it just catches your attention.
Honestly, on another note, I was just kind of like thinking about it, just because you saw the trailer for Infinity Wars and that's coming out.
Oh, a little note about Infinity War that I noticed.
Okay. Yeah.
So, you know how people just riot the DC cinematic universe for being dark and gritty?
Yeah, I know that's definitely when it's one of the main criticisms is that like from like the tone and like the color palette, it's all like all drab and gray.
And I won't say that it's unfounded. There are definitely some issues that DC could work on, but on the same coin, it really feels like Marvel, having cemented itself as like a giant in terms of superhero films, might not be giving other media the room to grow. And so, because we've seen with Suicide Squad and the more recent Justice League, that DC is willing to listen to fans, try to make something different. Admittedly, in some respects, like the humor and whatnot, they might try to emulate Marvel, but that's what everyone's been asking for. Like, oh man, make it more fun, make it lighter, brighter, that sort of thing. But then suddenly they'll still ride it like it's bad, and suddenly Infinity War comes along, and then while Justice League is basking in the limelight, trying to be brighter and happier for everyone who asked for that, suddenly Infinity War comes along, and then it just has this grimmer tone, which isn't bad. I mean, tell a story as it needs to be told, but I will see people praising this, turn around and go, DC's not doing nearly as well, they don't have interesting ideas, they just don't have anything going for them, and it's unfair that people will stand like this, like, oh man, this is my favorite company, sure, but there's a point where you need to stop and say, are we really critically judging something, or are we going into this with like the biases we've developed?
I think that definitely brings up an interesting point about like how a lot of the times we want. I think one of the like good things about like just the way everyone has a voice is that you get to hear a bunch of different experiences and ideas and views that like before basically everyone had a blog. You had the critics, you had the people who got paid to do this stuff, and you still have that now. But like now, it's kind of like you start to hear more from the fans about how they feel about how it's accepted. And while that can be good, you do kind of get the sense that like everyone just kind of follows it's kind of like nothing's really changed. Like instead of hearing what you would think would be a diversity of opinions, you kind of hear like a general wave of the same stuff, maybe a little differences, and then like small little blimps of like something different. And I think when it comes to like the standing for Marvel, like I get it. You love if you're coming from someone who loves the Marvel movies or loves the Marvel comics, I understand that.
And in another point of their defense, Marvel has been consistent with their releases. They've had years to develop.
And I think
other companies are have just been jumping on the train. Not that it's bad, it's just that they just not have had the chance to prosper in this market.
And I think that brings up one interesting point is kind of how like because of how dominant Marvel has been for basically a decade now, it's hard to not when you go out there and you say, oh, I want to make a superhero movie or even a superhero TV show, a superhero comic,
or just any. Not only just superhero media, but also the shared universe, which Marvel has helped to popularize, but no one's been able to replicate recently.
Well, I mean, yeah, but you kind of see people trying that. They see like, well, what's the best way to do it?
Yeah.
You see Marvel doing it, and then you see
DC,
a bunch of, like,
you would think that DC would be the direct competition to Marvel, but it's really been struggling, and that doesn't give much hope for non-Big Two companies. Like, say, we had Universal Studios try to bring out their monsters in a very action-adventure horror light with films like Dracula Untold, and more recently, Tom Cruise's The Mummy.
yeah, that's something to talk about, the Mummy. I think we'll kind of save that for like whatever. But like it's an interesting thing.
But in any case, so without jumping on the topic of The Mummy too much, so we can talk about it again later. When they went in, they tried to get a shared universe going from movie one, and that's not necessarily a bad idea. It's just that they didn't really execute it properly. In my opinion,
I think one of the things you could tell is they were definitely trying to go for that Avengers type thing where Russell Crowe was coming in kind of like
Nick Fury for Revenge.
Yeah, exactly.
He was basically organizing the characters into becoming the mainstays.
He was almost obviously going for, oh man, this is a thing. Like if I was to make a comparison, when Skull Island came out, I think they did their shared universe pretty tactfully.
Oh yeah.
You kind of knew, like, I think most people knew coming in, like, okay, they're gonna set up for it, but like, it wasn't so.
It was never forced.
Yeah, it wasn't so ham-fisted, like, the dark universe. Oh
yeah.
Give
you speaking of which, Universal Studios has elected to call their monster universe the Dark Universe because actually it's a funny story because Godzilla, King Kong, and the kaiju, who should be called the Kaiju Universe, took the name Monsterverse.
Right.
So they had to call themselves something else, but they didn't get creative.
Right. I think so. I get the idea because they're bringing back, so to speak, kind of like the whole monsters of old.
Actually, when you really think about it, the problem that Universal and DC might have is that when they go into it, they jump right into what they think works, which is, oh, let's try throwing in a lot of humor, which The Mummy definitely does.
Yeah.
To the point where it gets exhausting.
Yeah, I think. Well, and I think the thing is kind of like, well, if it's talking about trying to emulate this thing of, okay, if we're going for a shared universe, we're going for something action packed. You see Marvel and it's like, okay, we do it like that. One thing I don't think they get the formula down right enough, and two, I think that in part is because they're not trying to go for their own brand of humor. Like you see, they're trying to go for the references. They're trying to go for something that doesn't work for where they are. Like you see the Dark Universe, they're just getting off. Like for example, if you go for Back from Iron Man, which was just kind of the start. It didn't have the references because it didn't have the thing built up. It had to.
That's right. It never really had the expectation of a shared universe. Until you got to Incredible Hulk.
I feel like the Incredible Hulk definitely was the thing that kind of showed, okay, this is going to.
But even that was standalone. The message didn't come towards the end when Stark shows up. Oh man, let's start the Avengers.
I think they kind of what they did right from the beginning was, and I as much as we can criticize Marvel, you can give them points on this. When they start off right, they just tell the story, and then they kind of allowed the viewers to be like, okay, things are connecting. Where because it's so, but the problem is because DC and Dark Universe started so late, they're kind of just trying to ride the coattail of shared universe and all these memes and in jokes, or at least trying to start it up, and it's kind of hard to follow. You don't have you don't have people coming in to characters they like maybe from the comics you like Aquaman,
but not personally, but then therein lies the problem again, and going back to. Therein lies the problem, and going back to what I said about Spider-Man Into the Spider-Verse. Once again, television movies are just more accessible, and Marvel has been in both movies and television with their live action and some animated shows, and they've had some time to really build themselves up a presence. DC, on the other hand, had a chance to build up a presence, but they didn't really take it. They made Man of Steel, and then they thought, oh, I guess we'll make Batman versus Superman, but they never really thought about the long term like they could have.
And I don't really know how the whole process of deciding which movie goes which and how the Warner Brothers decides that. But I think one of the things that did kind of hurt DC was they right after the Dark Knight series, which was really the only DC stuff at the time. Around the time Marvel was picking up with the Avengers, they kind of went from Man of Steel, and it was like, well, this was the start, and it kind of did a hard reset, and I feel like that kind of threw people off. Like people love the Dark Knight series from the movies, and then like the tone didn't really shift with Man of Steel. People were kind of wondering, you had the odd movies like that one Green Lantern movie, which I really don't like. We try to forget those things.
And I would also say that DC's film presence, even pre-shared universe material, really wasn't that strong outside of Batman, because even with like how Batman and Robin was just not popular with people, the Batman films from the early to late 90s were still like fresh in public mind, and the Dark Knight films helped solidify that.
Right. I think people were coming off of everyone was. I think where DC was trying to like go. Well, DC was kind of just like being carried by Batman for the longest time.
And Green Lantern and Superman Returns did them no favors.
Yeah, they really did.
And I don't even get me started on Catwoman.
There's certain things we just don't want to talk about.
Yeah.
But like Marvel, I think Marvel like they were able to like pick up their base. They basically were. They took care of their base. They took care of their fundamentals. So now, even though I feel kind of burnt out with every single Marvel movie coming out a month, I can look back and reflect on, well, they built it up. You had your characters. You had your Thor. You had Captain America. You had people who liked those different characters, and when they came together, you were able to craft something out of it.
Because if they made the mistake of being mediocre from the get-go, like they've been kind of starting to be lately with some of their films, then they would have been asked to me like, oh, this is just a generic superhero film. But even if the quality drops, even if it bounces around or whatever, they have a foothold in pop culture, and people will always think, if I want to watch something fun, action-packed, but just a good time, I will go see the new Marvel movie. And that's what people usually say.
Now, I think this brings up an interesting point, because also, like, I think what happened today was Disney basically buying out Fox Marvel.
Oh yeah, Disney.
So essentially, because it's funny when growing up how because for a while time where Batman would be DC's kind of like go-to movies, X-Men was Marvel's for like the longest time.
Oh no, yeah.
And now with DC, basically Disney, Marvel, and Fox Marvel becoming one thing, I don't really know what this means necessarily for like X.
I mean,
not necessarily just
in the long run, we don't know. The Marvel properties that Fox owns, like X-Men, Fantastic Four, and any others we might have missed, those we'll wait to see what Marvel does with them. But you can get an idea from the movies they have now. But the real point is, I think, is that Disney's going to do a lot of stuff with not just Marvel properties, but with all the other popular properties that they've attained from Fox. Because by buying Fox out, they've almost gotten 80% of all major pop culture by this point, American pop culture.
Right. I don't know. Like, I think some people were like, the common idea is that, oh no, like, for people who don't, I think it's kind of like two camps. To people who really enjoy the Marvel movies, they think, oh, this is great. Now, like, the universe won't be all, basically, like, all the disconnect and continuity breaks kind of ruin the MCU, kind of mess up because they're all separate properties can come together. People are kind of happy about that. I think there's another side that I tend to go to where I'm kind of afraid that the team and tone of the X-Men that like I really love will kind of get ham-fisted into this kind of memey, reference heavy kind of cultural personality,
snarky humor,
and I'm just like, that's fine for certain movies. I'm not saying that's just.
It's just
trash.
that when they copy paste it to every single movie, you start to lose a little interest. That's what's happening for us, at least.
And I think that I have the fear for that after X-Men. It's like I think I saw this on Twitter. So part of it is that just like not just the the fact that Disney buying out Fox, just the fact that monopolies tend to ham-fist diversity and ham-fist like creativity.
And Disney is pretty big right now. I mean, with the recent acquisition, and even before that, they just had a lot going for them. And as a business, they are way too powerful.
So, I don't know. It's kind of interesting. I will say one thing though. I am interested to how Black Panther's panning out because that's one of the
one of the better
that's
films.
kind of one of my other movies. I'm definitely
Easily
actually
one of the
hyped to
better films by Marvel that we're waiting for. Because honestly, just watching the trailer, it is something fresh, different, and fun. Just like what's going on with Spider-Man into the Spider-Verse. They're taking a character that most people don't really know, and they're going to make wonders with them, like what they've done with Captain America. Because before First Avenger, for example, he was I've kind of heard of him. It's just that it wasn't really until you watched the movie that you got excited when you heard the name Captain America. And I hope the same works for Black Panther. It probably will.
Yeah, I will. So I think there is a good thing to give like the Black Panther just like that, like kind of like what they did with Luke Cage in the for the Marvel Netflix is that like you give characters who've been in the Marvel comics for a while but never really had any attention. Usually because they're POCs, so those always seem to get they never they get the kind of the scraps from
especially since like nerddom has heavy like just involvement from like white nerds and whatnot, and trying to get in POCs to like check out more of the stuff without being harassed or whatever, it's hard. So like making the media more accessible is a nice touch.
I do have a feeling because I'll make this crap all the time, but when I feel like the certain characters, like for example Hulk, and when it came to movies, never really got I think a fair deal. Like Iron Man movies, did their thing. Captain American movies did their things. But like
I see where you're coming from.
When you look at Incredible Hulk, like even from obviously the 2005 one was bad, but like even when the new 2008 one, which was supposed to tie into the Avengers, it just always seems like he plays second fiddle, and I feel like the character of Hulk
because what Marvel did essentially was like once they saw that people liked something, they started banking on it to the max. Like for example, Robert Downey Jr.'s portrayal of Iron Man is considered one of like the most popular characters of the Avengers in the Marvel Cinematic Universe as a whole. So like Disney and like Marvel Studios were just like, oh man, it's Iron Man. He's our boy. He's the man. Without him, the Avengers wouldn't be able to do stuff. Oh man.
Yeah, it's also kind of weird. Like when you look into like the comics of it, like yeah, of course, yes, Iron Man has like his strengths, but it's like it's not like someone can make the complaint if we were to bring around DC, kind of like the complaint of Justice League is. Oh man, and I think that's probably why they took Superman out for most of the movie. Is that like, oh man, Superman's too powerful. He can kind of one shot in. Well, I don't necessarily agree with that. I can see where you can understand, given as long as Superman's been around and all the stuff he could potentially do, it could blank out the characters.
I'm sorry, Judith. I'm just thinking back to the scene in Batman versus Superman where Batman's
so spoilers for all who haven't seen. Just let you know if you might want to skip this part.
So I'm just every time you talk about we're this sort of thing like where Superman's like oh man his powers and like what he does, I always just go back to the scene in Batman vs Superman where Batman goes, oh man, if there's a 1% chance that he might turn on us, we have to take it. And Alfred's just like, Master Bruce, please just stop that. Like literally, there's a point in the movie where like. Bruce goes to a party and Alfred's like, go find a nice girl from Metropolis. She'll make you honest. And Bruce is like, just yeah, whatever. And that's just what I think of when it comes to these things. Like,
I mean, yeah, but like you really comparison, like Iron Man just isn't that powerful to like blot out the other characters. Like every other character,
and not just like physical strength, just like as a personality. But he's literally just because his whole personality is, oh man, I'm a douchebag, but with a heart of gold.
And that's, I don't know, I feel like that's been done so many times, but like when you get an actor, when you get someone like Robbie Downey Jr. To play, that brings a character like, I remember, if I go back to memory, I remember watching the Avengers before the movie Avengers, and like, well, I think an animated, kind of like a short animated film.
Oh yeah, Ultimate Avengers.
Yeah, Ultimate Avengers. I remember seeing that as a kid, and like it was the first time I heard of Iron Man. Like I knew about Hulk.
And the worst part,
I sort of knew about Captain America, and
the worst part is that it was Ultimate Iron Man because with the exception of characters from Spider-Man, a lot of Ultimate Universe Marvel characters are just dicks. So basically Tony Stark in the Ultimate Universe is like an asshole dialed up to 11.
Right. But like the thing was is that like he didn't. I don't know. Maybe the movie didn't portray it right, but he just didn't do much. Like you see him fight, and then like at once, and then one second like the suit like gets destroyed, and he almost dies.
Well, what else
and
is
then,
new?
Like, no, it's weird because like in the movies, like even when the suit's gone, like and I remember the suit's gone, or other times when the suit gets taken and like when it's matched, you see him like quick-wittedly think of something, or like he'll do this kind of like
That was definitely
MacGyver type thing.
that was especially present in the third film. That was because I remember the directors talking about how much he wanted to showcase how Tony can do stuff on his own as well as like with the armor.
Right, but then like just kind of like I feel like that and like the personality of Robert Downey Jr. did kind of elevate Iron Man to places he never really was as popular before then. And when you kind of saw him, you just didn't see him pull his own weight. And I feel like that kind of shift to where like characters like Hulk, who there used to be toys of him, the shows. Now he's kind of relegated to like a bro.
Because before the Marvel universe as a whole was really well known, I would say that cartoons and like and video games and media mostly focused on Spider-Man, the X-Men, and to an extent the Hulk, which was just better than it used to be. You like Judith said, people knew who he was. There were toys, and he had a presence outside of just that one big dude on the Avengers.
Yeah, and I don't know. It's frustrating. Like I want the character like really the only reason I care about the Avengers is Hulk. Like I was interested in Thor, but like I don't know. Every time I see the Thor movies, I haven't seen Thor Ragnarok, so like I know you have, Doc. But
I will say this. It was a fun film. Shout out to the director who I believe did What We Did in the Shadows, that fun vampire film. But I mean, I will say though, there was a lot of humor throughout. Just like at certain points, I couldn't quite take some of the more serious moments quite as well because like it would just jump into a joke right after.
I think we're in the place like we're not like anti-humor, like you can't have fun stuff. It's like no, we want fun, we want interesting, we want like lighthearted stuff. There's got to be a balance. And
and
the thing is,
the movie I think that gets that balance the best was Wonder Woman. Because like you've seen it, right?
Yeah, I have seen it.
Yeah, like the thing about Wonder Woman is that like it still has that feeling of a DC film where things can get like a little dark, a little gritty, but like the beauty of Wonder Woman and Patty Jenkins and all the others who worked on that film, thank you so much. Like when they made that film, it wasn't just humor, but it also wasn't just darkness. Like how it worked was that hey, the world wasn't in a great place because the movie is set in World War One. And things just weren't great at the time, but Diana as a character, when she's becoming Wonder Woman, she is full of life. She wants to do the right thing despite the world around her. And as dark as it gets, she will fight to make sure something good happens. And then every moment, every laugh, every just smile becomes worth it because there's a sense that it was earned from the darkness. Like, and that's just what we're talking about here, balance.
I think it matters kind of like going out, like the kind of like setting the tone what the movie's gonna be about. Like when you see a advertisement for Guardians of the Galaxy, you know it's going to be humor heavy. It's not just humor heavy, but it's going to be that light tone where like there will be serious moments, but mostly you're going to be there for the in jokes, for the character dynamics, for kind of like the funny little like stuff. And but like because you know that, like you go in there and it seems to have gotten the formula down.
Yeah, let's say it right now. Some of the best films in the MCU have to be Ant-Man and the Guardians of the Galaxy films, volumes 1 and 2.
Yeah, I personally say where it's just
the funniest thing is those were the ones intended to be comedies, like for the most part.
But the thing is, I feel like one thing, and I know some people may agree, but I feel like the fact that like the way they do it, structure is that the comedy kind of like it almost like disengages you. You kind of just become relaxed, and you're not expecting the way they kind of, I think, kind of slowly like let into the serious moments, kind of like takes you off guard, but like not in a jarring way.
Yeah.
Kind of I feel like
let me make the
Let
me make the comparison here between how I felt watching Guardians of the Galaxy versus how I felt with jokes in Thor. But once again, Thor was a fun, good film, but when it comes to Guardians of the Galaxy, a film intentionally made to be a comedy, for a big part, it still manages to blend the action and more serious moments. Like Volume 2, when I remember watching Guardians of the Galaxy Volume 2, yeah, you got the jokes. Everyone's got their banter with each other. But whenever things got heavy, they stay that way. I didn't quite feel as much with Thor. A lot of it felt like thrown in, like, oh, Dad's dead, the hammer's gone. Oh, we had a sister, but you never really feel the weight of like what that means. And Thor's all going around like, oh, we're heroes, we have to save the day, but he's always like falling over and just getting messed up.
Yeah, I think what happens is they try to go for like this. I think they're going for one theme and one message, and then when they're trying to add in, kind of spice it up,
starts
loses the kind of the original, like I think the original backbone that they were trying to go for. I feel like that may have been a problem with most Thor movies, is that like from the first all the way to
they
the
just
third,
have not had great direction.
Yeah, you don't really see the direction. Like, the first one was kind of like your introduction to Thor, and how like he was a strong warrior, but he was arrogant and he was pompous, and he was
kind of just stuck in that small town, just talking to people.
Right. So he kind of had to grow, and like, while I see that it kind of did get overshadowed, and I think this is one of my issues with the Thor movie and Thor as a character, is that he has to, like, I think the first movie kind of sealed that in, where he got overshadowed by Loki's deep, like, whiny.
Because ever since Avengers,
his interesting thing where like basically everyone didn't really care about Thor. He was just kind of like a macho dude.
Oh yeah,
and, but Loki was like with this tortured soul, and it kind of just
ever since,
his,
especially ever since Avengers, like, by giving Loki more of a role, it's not a bad thing, but like there was a certain point where they just preferred what was popular, like what happened with Iron Man. They repeated it with Loki, and they'll repeat it with whatever else sells.
Right. I feel like that did kind of detract from Thor, and this kind of my general interest in the Thor movies, because you see Thor 2, you kind of think, okay, it basically becomes kind of like Loki's movie. It really was Loki's movie. Like he was kind of like the main.
He was there
when he died. When like his like when their mom died, people's like it was Loki's acting that like got it, not necessarily Thor's reaction, Thor's emotions. Like he was just kind of off to the side.
And then also in Avengers, he's suddenly like the big bad, even though like it's weird because in Thor Ragnarok he's played off as kind of actually his title, God of Mischief. He gets into some shenanigans and whatnot, but he's never that genocidal dictator we saw in Avengers, which is weird.
Yeah.
So it's like you just don't feel the consistency as much, and like it's all over the place.
Right. I think that kind of shows with like the issue with Thor Ragnarok. Even though I still heard people like rant and rave about it being
and having
really good and having a good message. Which
having seen it myself, I can confirm. Like I said, good fun movie. It actually has some good messages in it. I feel like they could have been stronger if some of the jokes dialed back a little bit, but otherwise it is still an enjoyable film. Not the best, but still very enjoyable.
Yeah, I think that's kind of all we really have to talk about today. We got some good stuff in there. So that was the Degenerates podcast. Thanks for listening.
Hope to see you soon.
Yeah.